I've never said this out loud, and I've never even thought about it, but I think seeing me was a reminder of the pain that they had felt. Moral of my story so far, the journey I've experienced, the theme, I guess you could say, is just constantly craving home. Having lots of everything, like 2 hair straighteners, 2 toothbrushes, 2 lots of everything, suddenly in one place. I was like, actually, this is really nice. Cool. I still remember getting my very first business card that said Chloe Bisson, director. And I remember the first thing I did was take a photo and send it to my parents. 3 months in, I remember sitting at the desk going, what now? When I spoke to the doctor, I turned around and went, you're absolutely wrong. I said, I'm the most positive driven person you'll ever met. How can I be depressed? Everything came crumbling down around me. So maybe my story can help people. So I became a coach. I wrote my first book. That was my story of my depression, not even, anything useful for people in business. And then
it is very useful for people in business, right? Because a lot of people go through depression in business and they just keep going, don't they?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Need to Succeed podcast. And like I always say on this podcast, it's all about bringing on incredible entrepreneurs and just really understanding their journeys, right? Because oftentimes what happens is 2 people go through the exact same situation. One person decides because of this situation, they're going to go on to become wildly successful. And the other person decides because of that same situation, they can no longer achieve the things that they've set out to achieve. Exact same situation, different outcomes. Like, what is the mindset of the successful people? That is exactly what we look to uncover on the Need to Succeed podcast. And today we have got an absolutely incredible entrepreneur. She is a multiple award-winning publishing expert, a #1 best-selling author, and an international speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Chloe Bisson.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. Great to have you. And I'm super excited about this one, Chloe.
Thank you.
You are the visibility queen when it comes to, getting yourself out there, getting people to understand your message, know who you are. You help me a lot when it actually comes to, my public speaking as well. So I'm super excited for everyone to actually get to understand the journey.
Yeah, me too. I'm a little bit nervous because I know you go deep into the stuff here around our mindset. So we'll see what uncovers, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes.
I feel we'll be good. The tables have turned. Yeah.
Haven't they just? Yeah. It used to be me giving you feedback. Now you're
exactly.
Now you're
and it's great. Because I remember you telling me about, being vulnerable and just really tapping into, the things you don't really want, to disclose about yourself. Yeah. It's actually the things that are really going to truly motivate and inspire people. So, here we go.
Let's go.
So look, we've got a tradition on the podcast, Chloe. Mm-hmm. Now, the very, very first question is, what does success actually mean to you?
Oh, good question. So to me, success is about creating something that you love. I think a lot of people feel like success is achieving something, so hitting a certain target or having a particular outcome, tangible thing. For me, it's about creation. As long as you create something that you love, then that's success. And every single day I always say to people that I work with, or even just to myself sometimes, what do I want to create today? What would I love to create today? So for me, success is about creating that thing and falling in love with it.
Wow. That's super powerful. And it's so true. Certainly there's, and I always say this as well, there's a common thread between, the people who are having that chat, because, I'm fortunate enough to, get people who are really successful, and none of them actually talk about money and talk about this, this thing that they're chasing. It's all about the process. It's all about the inputs, the outputs, the result you're going to get is going to be the result you're going to get. But it's like that process, that journey, that's really where the success lies, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people, when they focus on money, I know, Ibrahim, you know my story, but a lot of the time when I focused on money in my businesses, it didn't come because I was focused on the trying, the fighting, the hard graft, and it just didn't land. Whereas I think when you focus on what you love to create, it feels different. The energy of creation is a whole different energy vibrationally than it is the lack, the need of money, the want of something. It's totally different. And I think for me, I used to always think, success is spending time doing what I love. I started doing that and I got bored. So I don't think it's actually spending the time. For me, it's about always having that freedom to be creative, run podcasts, speak, write books, just do something that makes you happy every day.
Amazing. How do you juxtapose that position then? Because, I'm broke, I'm trying to make money, and we're talking about doing something that I love, but, something that I love might not really bring me money right now, and I really need to start making that money. How do you, what do you say to me?
Yeah, so I'm going to zoom out a tiny bit to zoom back to your question. So I've studied a lot of mindset. I had a lot of history on negative mindsets and mental illnesses and things. So I had to do a lot of deep work on my mindset. And the one rule that I always live by is that we're always operating from a place of fear or love. There's only two tracks. You can say, oh, but there's something in the middle. There isn't, in my belief. It's fear or love. If you're operating down a place of fear, which a lot of people that are broke are, it's because they're focusing on what they don't have, the fear, the uncertainty, the lack. And by the way, I'm not saying that's, they shouldn't do that. It's very common. Like, if I can't afford to pay my bills, I'm going to be in a place of fear. That's very natural. Whereas when you focus on what you love, you start to attract more positive things. And coming back down to your question, I think when people are broke, focusing on needing money, it's what you focus on. So if you focus on the fact that I'm broke, I can't afford to live, like I've had my fair share of that with my business, not being able to pay my staff, having to let them go, wondering how I'm going to have to get a job. And if you focus on that, you're going to get more of that. Whereas there are always things that we love. It might just be watching your favourite movie, watching a TV episode you love, listening to your favourite song. It doesn't have to be going on a fancy holiday or, treating your family to something. It can be just simply, what do I want to do today that I love? And if you just start even 5 minutes a day with that, you're going to be creating more positive energy, focusing more on what you love, and then you'll notice that the fear will start to reduce and you'll get more and more of what you love. It's like a compound effect.
Wow, that is so powerful. I'll just listen going, yep. Like, it's so powerful because you can't, it's like what I say, you can't have hate and love at the same time, exactly. Right? You can't be happy and sad at the same time. So if you choose to be happy, it's just weird because I was going to film some content yesterday and I had this mind block in my head. It was some content I'm filming for some training and I had this mind block in my head. And I just said to myself, you know what, bro, like, just relax, just chill. I just want to play with my daughter for a little bit, right? And then I came back, bang. Yeah. I didn't even have to think. Boom, camera, lights, ready, let's go. Bang. Yeah. And it's like everything just became more free flow, right? And it's what you focus on. If you're focusing on, I've got to do this, I want to make it really perfect. It's going to be, if I don't do this right, then it's not going to come out right and I'm not going to get those results. You're going to become tense. But it's the same thing. If you're focusing on fear, you're focusing on the lack of what you've actually got, then you're going to get more of that because that's what you're thinking of. Your mind can't think of two different things really at the same time. Exactly. Especially when it's thinking with emotions, right? Naturally, if you're thinking of emotion, then that thought becomes a lot more, a lot more pronounced, right? Which means it doesn't leave room for you to really think about anything else. Yeah. Okay, brilliant stuff. I love that. A really, really good answer. Okay, so now let's get into your story, right? Let's get into, because I truly understand and I love, I'm stealing this from Stephen Butler and I've said it a couple of times because I love the way he phrases it. He just, succinctly, asks the question in a way of what I want to find out, right? Which is, there's normally a point in your life that, something happens and that thing just kind of defines, who you are. Not who you are or like the trajectory that your life is taking, but it's normally when you're a kid. But do you remember from a young age, like what's something that you say as a child, something happened and from that moment I just started thinking a little bit differently. Do you remember a point? Is there a point like that in your life?
Yeah, there is.
As a child?
Yeah.
There is.
And it's interesting because I do, as you said, I do a lot of public speaking. I've shared a lot of my story publicly before, but I've not actually ever shared this. Nobody's ever really asked me this question. So it's quite interesting that it comes up. So for me, when I was 10 years old, my parents divorced and I was an only child. My parents quite literally left each other. My mum left with me and they didn't speak till like my 21st birthday. Wow. Not a word, not a text message, nothing. So I was an only child having to essentially manage two parents who were still in love with each other but in so much pain. Also working out their way of this new world that they were living in with a daughter that they had to share. And the reason why I feel like this was a defining moment for me was it was not the most loving breakup. They had a lot of hatred for each other, but I know they were doing what they needed to do to survive, and I've totally forgiven them through it all. I know they were just trying to do the best with what they could at the time. But where it was defining for me was I ended up staying one night at one of their houses and another night at another. So I was every day moving house, quite literally packing my bag every day and moving. So whilst I've never been homeless as such, and I've never not had a home, I never felt like I had a home from that point. And because they were so negative towards each other, the only way I could get a positive outcome from them was to perform well, be good at school, do what was best or do what I was told to do, because then ultimately they would be happy and wouldn't be moaning to each other or about each other to me. So two things I learned in that moment. One was I need to succeed. Funny enough, I'm on the Need to Succeed podcast. I needed to succeed to be able to get them to be happy. And the second one was my resilience, because I had to adapt every day my communication style. The way my mum was and the way my dad was were very different individuals, very different personality styles. And now that I understand more about mindset, I can totally see why. Every day from the age of 10, I adapted. I was more resilient. I had to be one way for one person, one way for the other person. So now when I'm in situations like being on podcasts, I don't think before I speak, because I trust that I've been able to adapt. I've learned that art from a very young age. So whilst it was a very difficult time for me, those 10 years between the age of 10 and 21, that's why I am the way I am now. That's defined my hunger, my craving of achievement, and my ability to communicate in any situation. Now, I just wanted to quickly interrupt this episode to share a quick message with you. Now, I've been hosting these interviews with Inspired by Show for a while now, and I've been loving all of the great feedback from our listeners. And it really means a lot when you all share from listening to these episodes, watching these episodes, share your incredible feedback. And I love that you love it as much as we do. Now, my mission for the Inspired by Show is to inspire others to challenge the norm, share their story, knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable and, shock horror, take the mask off and be raw and real. So I have a favor to ask. Can you help me on this mission by sharing this episode with someone who you think needs to hear this message? Maybe there's a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or someone that you know that would really benefit from hearing this inspiring story. If you could do that to help us, help even more people to challenge the norm and push themselves out of their own comfort zone, then I'd really appreciate it. So if you haven't already, share this episode with a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or someone that you know would benefit. Now, back to the episode.
It's so important. They always say like the most successful entrepreneurs, they've just been through something, trauma, and I mean, you know, like him or don't like him, you know, it's something that Andrew Tate talks about, which is you need to have been through trauma. You need to have been through some stuff, right, to really understand life and to understand how to deal with life in a certain way. Like, if you haven't, like, go out there and seek it. And the only way to go out there and seek it generally in a business sense is to, you know, push through your fear. You know, even if you're scared, just jump and do something outside of your comfort zone. But obviously sometimes, you know, you just go through that naturally. So kind of going through that, but you've just linked it well with, you know, who you are now, is being able to adapt in situations. You know, as an entrepreneur, if you can't adapt to think quickly on your feet, you're going to lose out on deals, you're going to miss out on opportunities, and, you know, sometimes you might just make a fool of yourself, right? Yeah. Like if I ask a tough question now and you can't adapt to it, now I'm joking. You know, but you get the point, but that's something that's kind of stayed with you, and it's come from a difficult period in your life. So sometimes people look at difficulties like it's a problem, but actually they could, you know, really become something that defines who you are in a positive way in the future, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think at the time it sucks, right? Like when you go through that, you're not, at 10 years old, I wasn't thinking this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know, we look back now and I think, God, that I'm so grateful for that experience. And I say to both my parents now, I'm so grateful. It was tough, but like you say, I wouldn't be able to adapt in situations I'm in now. I wouldn't be able to emotionally connect with either of them. Whereas now I've got a really positive relationship with both of them, and I can be very honest and say, I didn't like it when you dad. Even now, my mum makes comments, different things about my dad. I'm like, Mum, stop. You did it for 10 years, no more. And we have a laugh about it. But it's one of those things that I think sometimes it's just about understanding people's behaviour. And I now understand my behaviour as a result of seeing theirs and knowing actually that's a little bit dysfunctional. And actually now, how will I be different when I'm a parent? Yeah,
brilliant. Now, just kind of going back to that period, you know, obviously you've got these two people in your life who, you know, I've got an 18-month daughter now, so I know the way she just like I'm like God. Do you know what I mean? And so it's like her mom, right? And you get this for 10 years, and then all of a sudden there's this separation, and they're not really being nice to each other. Like, how were you as a 10-year-old kind of processing this at the time?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I wasn't really processing it. I don't think I ever was taught how to process what was going through my head. I remember there was a school counsellor of somewhere for the first 6 months that offered me support. And I remember just talking about it, and I was almost, denial is a bit of my history. I have a habit of going into denial. And I think I was just in denial because I was telling myself this is a new exciting part of my life. I was going to have 2 houses, I was going to have 2 families, you know, the BS that they tell you when you go through this. And I was just kept telling myself that I'm going to get a new bedroom, and my mum was, you know, helping me decorate this new bedroom, and just having complete denial of actually what was going on. I wasn't really processing it. And then when I started, I look back now and I know why, but you know, when people go through teen years, they say, you know, it's a nightmare, you know, good luck with your daughter. So, you know, girls, everyone rebels, but girls can get really dramatic and emotional. And I was going through it then. I think that's when I was rebelling and I was kicking off from my mum, I was kicking off from my dad. And I could have just said to my mum, I'm staying at my dad's. And I could have said to my dad, I'm staying at my mum's. And I could have been anywhere, you know. And they trusted me because I had to grow up fast. So I think going back down to processing it, I don't think I ever did. I think what happened was I just got on with it. And probably not the healthiest processing tool. And then it came out a lot in my older years, I'd say in the last sort of 10 years, after that 21st birthday and going through more personal stuff, that's when I suddenly had this moment of realization of, oh my gosh, this is all coming back down to that moment.
Wow. That's super, super interesting. I think it's probably a mechanism that I've used as well. I always say to people that, I know I've definitely had a traumatic childhood, and because I think, I don't know, I smoked a lot of weed in my teenage years, and, so I don't know, but, my memory definitely is affected, right? But I put it down to, to trauma that I had as a child, because even in my teenage years, I couldn't really even remember my childhood. So I know there was a lot of trauma there, but that's pretty much how I generally in my life just deal with things like, cool, it doesn't matter, and having been homeless as well, I'm like it does, I'll be all right. I don't need to I don't need to worry. I don't need to, I'll just be good. Whatever happens, we'll just move on next. Next. And like you said, it's probably not the healthiest way,
but it gets you through it.
Yes, exactly.
That's the thing. I think I don't look back and think I should have processed that any different. I think that's what I needed at the time. Like you said, like we go into this space of denial. Like I can't remember much of my childhood either. From the age of about, I can't remember, I think I've got one memory from under 10, one memory of my parents together. And that's only because I've seen a video footage of a moment that I can now remember. Wow. And I again, honestly had no idea that was not normal. It was only about 5 years ago, I was chatting to my boyfriend, Cedric, and he was telling me about when he was 4 and a memory when he was 6. And I said to him, babe, do you remember those things? I said, I don't remember anything. He went, you don't remember anything? And it was that look in his eyes. And I'm like, is that not normal? Because I don't have any brothers or sisters to ask. I didn't have anyone. You don't really have that conversation.
It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad because I know exactly, like, my missus talking about shit. I think her earliest memory is like 2.
Yeah.
I'm like, 2? Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's like, for me anyway, I'm like, I have this like thing, like, I wish I could remember that stuff, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've gone back to a lot of it now, and I still can't remember it, and I probably never will, but I'm allowing that, younger version of me, that younger Chloe, to say, actually, that's okay, Chloe, you did what you need to do then to protect yourself. I was protecting myself to get through it, and now that I'm in a safer space, I was okay to process it. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's going back to the same thing. You did what you had to do to protect yourself. I wouldn't change it because it's made you more resilient. There's a yin and yang to everything. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just life. It's dark and then there's light. That's what you had to do. But as a result of that, that's now built this character that, when you need to deep into that resolve, it's there. Do you know what I mean? Because you've done that before. So that's pretty cool. Awesome. So, you kind of go through these few years. Obviously, you're going back and forth. How long did that go on for? So I left home at 18. So it was 8 years of going back and forth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And every time you go to this house, he's a dick. And you go to that house and she's a dick, and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And then new partners came involved. So my mum remarried. She wasn't remarried when I was that young, but my stepdad moved in, I think, when I was 12 or 13.
Yeah.
My dad's girlfriend was on the scene from about 12 or 13. So it was like going through all of that new experience of like, who are these two new adults in my life? And again, knowing what I know now, 2 very different personality styles again. And that whole dynamic of, I've now got my mum and my stepdad, I've now got my dad and his girlfriend, their kids that came into the scene, suddenly having step parents, and it's just a whole minefield of things that I just never experienced.
Wow.
And I didn't know I would ever experience it because you just don't know those things.
Yeah. Did you like having siblings, or did you look at them as siblings?
It depends. Yes and no. I loved the experience of having siblings because I'd never had that before. And it was really interesting because they are really lovely people, but we've got very different backgrounds. So because they had their own childhoods, I had a brother and a sister on my dad's step family side and a sister and 2 brothers on the other side. So I suddenly had 5 siblings. So, but none of them had ever been only child. So we didn't have a lot in common in that respect. But I did love having people to connect with, to just have some sort of family. that got it.
Yeah.
We had a lot of laughs. We took the piss out of our step parents and each other's parents a lot. But as we've grown older, I've realised that I value them. But because we've had totally different childhoods, we've got different parents, we've got different value systems. Sometimes we just don't align to those things.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. And it's pretty much the same we say about friends as well, right? As you
Exactly.
start to, but it's also just as you start to get to a certain level, you know, there's different things that you value, different things that you focus on. And if people are just not aligned in, you know, where you're trying, obviously I know you're a high flying, high power lady. And if they're just not on that level, you know, naturally this, you know, we just kind of slowly drift away, right?
Exactly.
So that makes sense. Cool. So you get to 18
Yeah.
and you're leaving home for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that uni or?
So my family couldn't afford university. So I'm from Jersey in the Channel Islands. So to go to uni, you have to come to the UK. So you're overseas. It's like 5 times the price. So we just couldn't afford it. So I decided to go straight into work.
So there's no unis in Jersey?
Nope. I think they might have one sort of finance-based one now, but they didn't when I was studying. No.
Wow. So hang on. If you grew up in Jersey and you wanted to go to uni, you got to be loaded basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's tough. There's lots of different sort of hoops you need to jump through to get funding for it.
Yeah.
And my mum was just really honest. We had a really close relationship, obviously, because I was grown up with her and only her, me and her half the week. And she just sort of said to me, Chloe, if you want to go to uni, we'll make it happen. But if you're not sure, then why not just try and get a job and see what happens? And I just wasn't sure, and I couldn't bring myself to do that to my parents. I thought, you've had enough crap going on for the last 10 years. Actually, you've both tried really hard to bring me up. I'm just going to get a job. And so Jersey's a finance-based island, so there's loads of finance jobs. Decided to jump into finance, and I trained to be an accountant.
Nice.
So moved out. I was like, well, if I'm earning money, I just didn't want to live at home. And because I didn't really feel like anywhere was home, so I was just constantly craving. And this is literally the moral of my story so far. The journey I've experienced, the theme, I guess you could say, is just constantly craving home. So I moved out, got a flat, started training to be an accountant, and then just started my adult life.
How did that feel, like that moment when you moved out of home?
It felt really good, actually. I think it felt good because I wasn't hopping between homes. I had my hub. I still saw my parents regularly because Jersey's so small. I was never really that far from them, 20-minute walk or an hour, whatever. And just could actually have a place that was my own, that I didn't have to think about, okay, like for example, having lots of everything, like 2 hair straighteners, 2 toothbrushes, 2 lots of everything suddenly in one place. I was like, actually, this is really nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like you had 2 lots in the same place.
Yeah, exactly.
Did it feel at home though?
No, it didn't. And even now, like I'm 32, as we're talking, I'd say only now am I really understanding that home isn't a place, but I was constantly craving that, constantly.
Wow. So like, when did you make that realization? So when you're in there, obviously, I'm assuming you were happy.
Yeah.
But did you feel at that moment like it was home? Did you have your own freedom? Did you feel like, obviously now you're processing it with hindsight, but at that moment, did you feel like, yeah, this is incredible, this is it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Again, so I just was so unaware. I was just so excited to be paying my bills and choosing what, whether I paid for Sky TV or not, what internet I wanted, the things that you feel like you're an adult.
Yeah.
I remember getting my very first contract phone and being like, oh my God, I can afford to pay for a monthly contract with data. And I still remember getting my very first, it was Blackberries back then, God. And I remember getting my first Blackberry and I just felt like such an adult. I was so proud of myself.
Remember the BB pins?
Yeah.
Don't just the Blackberry, the BB pins back in the day, that was the one, that was the WhatsApp.
God, that was the WhatsApp,
it? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like, why accounting though?
Yeah, so I've always been sort of a high achiever, very driven, and I was just quite good at school. So was really good at maths, was really good at all that sort of stuff, and just thought, next logical step. The best companies on the island in Jersey were finance based.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't say it was easy to get a job because I studied, so the job I went with was PricewaterhouseCoopers, so one of the big 4 firms. And I basically started studying and training on the job at the same time. So where most people had to go to uni, I started studying with everyone that had already been to uni.
Nice.
So by the time I was 21, I was a chartered accountant when everyone else was, say, 27.
Wow.
So, but it was intense. But because I'd lived an intense life, it just felt like a continuation. Like, let's just keep going. This is, and we joke now with my business partners that this is Chloe pace. Like, this is just the pace my life has been since I was 10 years old. So it didn't feel strange.
Wow. Did you feel at the time that like it was intense? Was it a lot of work? Was there a lot of pressure?
It was a lot of pressure, but it felt normal. I didn't, again, looking back now, I'm like, that's probably not normal. But I was working like 10-hour days because that's what big four accountancy firms do. I was studying 3 hours a day, still going out partying, being an 18-year-old, and it was just felt normal.
Wow, okay. I mean, I was going to say what happened to the partying and all that sort of stuff, because the beauty of living home is like, cool, I've got my own freedom and I can kind of do what I want. So you were able to actually still balance all of that of while chasing this higher power. That's really interesting because generally it's, at that age, it's almost as if I'm chasing this career and I'm super focused and I've got to really give up this life. Like, how are you actually able to balance both of those?
Yeah. Do you know what it was? I was still trying to prove myself. So my whole childhood, since my parents split, I was constantly trying to prove myself, get the best grades, prove that I could be what they needed because they weren't happy. And I was trying to make them happy. So it just carried on. I was in a challenging situation where I was 18, sat alongside 22-year-olds who had just left university, and I was expected to do the same job, get paid the same. So I was just trying to prove myself. So it was like, if all the graduates can do it, I have to be able to do it. So I was working at weekends, I was partying in the evenings, like in the week. Like there was no like 9 till 5 and then weekends I do this. It was all just blurred into life.
Okay.
Spread out over the 7 days.
Makes sense. You keep coming back to sort of like making your parents happy, right? When and how did you make that connection between, your achievement and their happiness?
Now looking back, it's blatantly obvious, but at the time I had no idea. I kept trying to, I think I was telling myself that I was a high achiever for myself, and I just kept thinking that I want to prove to myself that I can do it. But what I noticed, and I'd say in the last, I went through quite a traumatic experience about 7-8 years ago, and I went through a lot of therapy in there. And it was when some of the stuff I was saying, like therapists asking me questions like you are, and me saying, oh, it's because I want to make my parents happy, or I want to prove this. And I started listening to myself, and I was like, why am I constantly mentioning my parents? And when I was achieving things, like, as you know, like winning my very first award, speaking on my first big event, I was inviting my mum to come along. I was leave the room and I'd ring my dad and be like, Dad, guess what? At the age of like 27, I'm like, why am I ringing my parents? And that's when it became so apparent. I was like, I might have had 200 people on stage. I might be on stage, have 200 people in the audience, like standing ovation. That made me happy. But was ringing my dad afterwards, telling him and hearing his reaction gave me the achievement. And it was that realization that I was like, okay, there's something more to this.
And what is that?
It was realizing that I still had a hole that I hadn't healed going through their divorce. I had a hole that I hadn't healed, and I realized actually I need to resolve that issue, that trauma. And I call it little t trauma, in a way of like, it wasn't a massive traumatic event with a capital T. It was a little t trauma because it was still traumatic for me. So I look back and I thought, I need to heal that, go through therapy for that, process that, and then I won't have that need as much. So I still do ring them and I still do say all these amazing, exciting things, but it's not the first thing I feel I need. I still get this, I still feel the success, whether they know about it or not.
So did you kind of feel like if you were successful, like they were going to get back together? Like, how were you processing that?
I think I was, in my head, it was, if I have achievement and I'm successful, they'll be happy. Because I could see both of them weren't happy. Because it was almost like, I've never said this out loud, and I've never even thought about it, but popped into my head just now. I think seeing me was a reminder of the pain that they had felt.
That's how you felt?
Yeah, because if my mum was frustrated at my dad, seeing me was a reminder of that. If my dad was upset, because my dad was heartbroken, and I think seeing me, I was a reminder of my mum. They've never told me this. I think I made up this story. And even now we talk about it, and both of them say the best thing that ever came out of their marriage was me, and they wouldn't change a thing for it. So I know now that they didn't need me to make them happy, but I think I just wanted to solve things. I just wanted to make them happy so that they would be happy.
It's a heavy burden to carry, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I can definitely understand, the, shame, regret, every time you're going back and you're doing this every single day.
Yeah.
And it's walking in and, if they're not happy, then you start thinking, oh, is it because they've seen me? Is it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense now. Okay, cool. So now you're in this, top 4 accountancy firm, which is pretty crazy. At the age of 21, you're not chartered. Every chartered accountant I see is like 60 or something.
Yeah, it's pretty fast to get through it. And I just carried on that trajectory. So I ended up I was headhunted into another company, and I was made director of the global company when I was 24.
Wow.
And I remember I still remember getting my very first business card that said Chloe Bisson, director. And I remember the first thing I did was take a photo and send it to my parents. And I remember looking at it going, Oh my God. And I was giving it out to everyone. And nobody gave a crap. No one cared what the company was. But I was like, I'm just so excited by this. And then when I was a director of that company, I realized I got sat at that chair, and it was about, massive pay rise, massive increase of responsibilities. And I loved it for about 2 months. And about 3 months in, I remember sitting at the desk going, what now? Because all I'd ever worked for was to be sat on that chair, in that seat, in that boardroom. And I was like, this isn't it. And then I went to the doctors because I wasn't feeling myself. And I honestly thought I was sick. Basically, I'd had like a sick bug for a couple of days. Every morning I felt really sick. Every evening I felt fine. And I was like, this is really bizarre. And at first I thought, oh my God, am I pregnant? Because is it morning sickness? I was never sick. And then I went to the doctors just to get a stomach tablet or something to get whatever it was out. And she said, Chloe, I think you're clinically depressed. And honestly, I was sat there going, you what? And I still remember it like it was yesterday. My mum was with me because back then I didn't know my connection to my parents and how reliant I was on their emotions and their reactions. And so my mum came with me and she told me this, and my mum said, yeah, I think you are as well. And I was sat there going, that's the reason she came with me, because I think she knew. And then when I spoke to the doctor, I turned around and went, you're absolutely wrong. I said, I'm the most positive driven person you've ever met. How can I be depressed? And I was so rude, and I was also so in denial. And then it was after that it was almost like that pulled a thread, and this whole image of myself that I painted in my head, the complete denial, the hole that I tried to cover over with so many layers, it just started to unravel.
What do you mean?
The reality hit a few days later. So she signed me off for 3 days. It was about to the end of the week. She said, Chloe, just take these 3 days. I can see you're a bit frustrated by it. I can see you're a bit upset by what I've shared. Take the few days, I'll sign you off, and we'll have a call on Friday. And she called me on Friday, and by that point, reality had hit. I was in tears. I was in pain. It was like someone had taken away the painkillers that I maybe I hadn't been on, but the emotional painkillers, yeah. And suddenly, it was the reality hit. I was so depressed. I was so down. Physically, couldn't move. I was in bed. I remember crying my eyes out at the smallest of things, and that's when I was like, ignorance was bliss. How have I not realized this much pain that I've been in? How have I not felt it? And then I started getting paranoid that, do I know my mind? Do I know myself? And how have I been lying to myself for, by that point it was 15 years.
How old were you at this point?
I was 25.
Well, you were literally asking yourself these questions. Yeah. That sounds like a scary place.
Yeah, it was. And I didn't know myself then, because at that point I was so unwell. By the time I'd actually accepted it, she signed me off for 6 months.
Wow. She
said, Chloe, this is going to take time.
So after the 3 days, you were meant to come back in. This was on a Friday. You had the phone call, and you were
gone.
Yeah.
I couldn't move. Physically couldn't move. And it was just horrific. It was one of the most painful experiences I've ever had in my life. It wasn't her telling me that I was depressed that was the painful bit. That was just the catalyst that made me have the realization. It was like she pulled that thread, and it was like this fake world, this fake me that I'd created came falling apart. And then it was that was like going from rock bottom every day, having to do something to just get back up. But because I was such a high achiever, I'd never had this huge realization before. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I quite literally ended up being off work. I had other stuff going on where my relationship had gone down the pan. I'd lost my home that I'd had. And it was just, everything came crumbling down around me.
Well, what was the trigger for that?
So just before that moment when I'd got my promotion, I was in a really good relationship, really positive relationship. We've been together for like 4 years, and we had bought our new house, 4-bedroom house. So everyone's like, oh, wow, like next steps engagement. And we were just on this beautiful journey. And I found out that he'd been unfaithful with a really good friend of mine, quite a lot. So that was the catalyst, because I think that moment of thinking I was really successful and him betraying me, and then obviously by that point everyone found out, our friends, everyone would look at me like I was damaged. And so I pushed further. I had more of a need to succeed. I had more to prove. And then I think I pushed too hard, and that's when it all came down.
Wow. Well, so it was just kind of having these blinkers on,
Yeah.
really just trying to block out the rest of the world and not really dealing with that pain. And
Yeah.
that really kind of made you snap.
For the second time, because the first pain was my parent divorce.
Yeah.
The second one was him being very unfaithful.
Yeah.
So it was like the second time, and I just kept fighting and fighting and pushing and pushing and pushing. And then I don't think I could push anymore.
Wow. So this 6 months, how were those 6 months? Or how did you cope with that?
Coping, I think I had coped quite well, but I had to be so patient with myself. Because I looked fine, and Jersey's a very small island, like any town really, I wanted to hide and stay in because I didn't want anyone to see me. Because I thought if they see me, they're going to think, well, why is she not at work? She looks fine. And it was a learning curve because my parents had never experienced me go through that. There was a tiny bit of mental illness in my family history, but not to this extent. My friends had no idea what I was going through. And so I remember one of my best friends coming around and saying, oh, I expected you to be crying. Like, I didn't know what to expect. He's one of my closest friends, and he just didn't know what to expect. And he just looked at me and said, you look okay, but are you okay? And I was almost just empty. So every day, those 6 months was just like learning to walk again. That's the only way I can describe it. And not breaking down. And I remember some days it was like a win was just from getting from the bed to the couch. And then the next day it was like, right, I'm going to shower and then go on the couch. I didn't leave that flat for ages. And then the doctor called me and said, look, I think you need to get out. I think, you sound a bit better. Why don't you try going to the gym? And I remember thinking, and the gym, to paint a better picture, was directly opposite my flat. I lived in a block of flats. The gym was in the building. So I didn't really ever, the risk of seeing someone, I think I'd cross a road and that was it. But I was terrified, and I only went to the gym when I knew everyone else would be at work, because I was just so embarrassed. And I just kept pushing, and every day was like a little step, a little step, a little step, until I started to feel normal again and started to feel it. Do you know what? It was a bit like a hunger. I started to feel hungry again. I was like, actually, I feel like my brain can actually be stimulated. But it took a really, really long time.
And what was that hunger?
It was a need of achieving, but for myself this time. It was like I wanted to prove that I wasn't just going to be lying in bed all day for the rest of my life. And I remember having a conversation with the doctors and wanting to go back to work. And she said to me, Chloe, I think you should take more time out. And I actually think maybe you should leave your job and just get a less stressful job or live on benefits. We can support you that way. Being 25 and hearing that, after how high achieving I was that was where the hunger came from. I don't know to this day if she did that intentionally to think this is going to spark her or not, who knows. But I had that moment where I was like, nah, like, I'm done. This is enough for me. Like 6 months sitting on my ass was enough. And I'd gone through so much. I'd learned so much about myself. And I thought, there's no way this experience is just for me to heal. Like other people have to benefit from this.
Wow.
And that's when I was just like, nah, I'm not. And I had a decision. I was at a crossroads. I was like, do I listen to her and just either not have a job at all, which was tempting to get paid and live on benefits in my flat in Jersey and just have an easy life? Or do I prove her wrong and do something more productive with my time? Because by that point, my job had pretty much gone. They had to plan recruiting other people. Me being out for 6 months, they couldn't survive.
Yes.
So I had to start from scratch. And that's when I realised that I had to make something out of this. And that's why I decided to start my own business.
Wow.
And just because I had nothing to lose at that point.
Wow.
It was like, I'm already at rock bottom.
Yeah.
Where else is it going to go? It's only going to go one way.
There's nowhere else to go, just forward, right?
Yeah.
Push off the wall and, launch yourself forward.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was next?
The reality was I started the business, and in hindsight, I definitely shouldn't have. I think I look back, I'm not saying I shouldn't have started a business, but I was it was like from 0 to 100. I was like, I'm going to design a logo, I'm going to build a website, I'm going to do this, I've got this planned. And everyone around me was like, Chloe, slow down.
This is mental. What are you doing?
You're crazy. You've just had depression. You're really unwell. Slow down. But I didn't, and I just kept pushing. So I put the same energy that I'd had into healing myself earlier into now doing something with it.
What business is it that you started?
So I started a coaching business.
Okay.
My goal was to just help people through things that they were experiencing. So one of the ways that I helped myself go through depression, about month 4 or 5, I started studying a coaching qualification because I'd found it so incredible, the coaches that I'd worked with that helped me get through my depression and the therapists that I'd worked with. And I was like, I loved everything they did, the gift they gave me, I want to be able to give other people. And I thought, well, actually, I've just gone through quite a serious mental illness, so maybe my story can help people. So I became a coach. I started coaching online. And because, again, I was like, I don't want to really see people in person. I definitely didn't want to see people I knew in Jersey. And funnily enough, my very first 2 coaching clients were ex-employees of the company I used to work for.
Wow.
So I'd mentored them in the company.
Did you headhunt them?
Yeah. No, do you know what?
Listen,
I wish I had.
have the same symptoms that I had. I could see that in your face.
No, do you know what? It would have been sweet if I had, but because I started publishing online and just like doing social media posts and doing lives and stuff, and they just reached out and said, Chloe, look, I loved you supporting me in the workplace. Can you give me some career coaching? Because I still want that promotion. And now you're not there to mentor me through it. I was like, well, yeah, go for it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So brilliant. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense because you've got, a huge business experience, you know, working for a top 4, being a director in a top 4 accounting firm. That's incredible, but then also going through this experience and witnessing coaches coaching you through that process. I think a combination of, helping, people career-wise as well as coaching people through, like, it's almost like a perfect, skill set combination. Once again, what's that saying? You grow through what you go through.
Definitely.
Right. And it seems like you kind of really leaned into that and use that. What does Tony Robbins say? Turn your mess into a message, right?
Exactly.
I'm just dropping this bars.
I love it.
It's just flowing, like, just coming out. Brilliant. Awesome. So how did that go with like the whole coaching stuff?
So like any business, just ups and downs. I had a really cool first couple of months, hit some revenue targets I never thought I'd hit, but I found myself plateauing.
What did you think the reason for that was?
It was just approaching the same energy, the same values, the same motivation I had in my career, in my own business. So that need to prove constantly came through. And I had no idea what it would be like because I was already in a bit of property when I had my job. I had no idea what building a property business would be like whilst trying to build my own other business. I didn't have a clue about getting a mortgage self-employed is extremely difficult compared to being able to give 3 months pay slips, for example. So I had to just put everything, like I paused everything else and just blinkers on into my business. And I did really well for the first, I'd say 6-7 months. And then when I hit a plateau and I started trying to grow it, and I found myself just constantly hitting the same brick wall. Like I was fully booked with my one-to-one clients. I couldn't earn any more. And it was only about a year and a half in, so about 18 months later, I realized my earnings kept stopping at a certain number. And that number was the exact same amount of my salary in my job.
Wow.
And I suddenly had this realization where I was like, this is not a coincidence. Like it was around the same number. And I was like, I can't get to my first 6 figures because of where I left my other job. And I realized it was my amount that I thought I deserved to earn. And so I was doing lives, I was doing speaking, I was loving all that, but I just couldn't reach the next, I couldn't scale it. I was my business and I was exhausted. I was finding myself questioning myself. My mindset was dropping. Like I mentioned, the fear and love thing earlier, I was just in a place of fear. What if I don't get more clients? What if I can't continue this success? What if I can't continue this pace? What if I can't take on more clients? And I found myself working the same amount of hours I worked in the corporate world, getting paid the same amount. Well, actually, my business was getting paid the same amount. I wasn't getting paid the same amount. And I just wasn't happy again. And there was moments where I was sat there, I remember being on my kitchen floor and my boyfriend came in and he asked me how I was and I was like, I'm not good. And I suddenly realised I was back in the same place, still exhausted, pushing myself, just trying to fight through something. And this time I wasn't getting paid if I wasn't working.
Because that's the difference, right? At least there's this cool safety, which is actually what keeps a lot of people trapped. But once you actually take that plunge to become an entrepreneur, even when you're going through these difficult times in your personal life, it's like, well, I've still got to get up. And I was listen, and I'm not saying I'm an advocate for this, but at the same time, I don't understand where it's coming from. I remember 50 Cent. It was literally a short that I watched on YouTube, and they said, listen, when you're in the hood, you can't afford to be depressed. Because you've still got to feed yourself, you've still got to feed your family. So yes, it's not that you don't have those feelings, but you've just got to get up and get the work done anyway, because otherwise nothing happens. So it's almost like there's this luxury element to it. But now that you're self-employed, you're having this, I've hit a brick wall again, but now you've got to, keep going. Like, how did you deal with that?
Very similar, actually. I realized I can't afford to live if I'm not working. And that was the pivotal moment for me, because I was like, I'm still working in a job, but this time I'm paying myself. And I just thought, I need to do business differently. And so I looked at other businesses that were doing this. Like you mentioned, Tony Robbins. I was like, Tony Robbins isn't the only person in his business. He's making a massive impact and some great money. There must be other ways of doing this.
Great money, he's doing all right.
I was like, there's got to be other ways of doing this. And so I sat down, I was like, right, I'm just going to analyze a model. Because I was an accountant, I was like, I'm just going to go through all the technical side, look at everyone's businesses and I picked sort of, I can't even remember who they were, about 5 of the top businesses at the time that I wanted to model. And I just analyzed everything. And I realized that I needed to scale differently. And so I then brought on business partners in my businesses. I started writing my first book because I thought if I can elevate my status and tell my story, then people will buy from me more, but I can actually scale it more. So I'm not working one-to-one anymore. So I wrote my first book. That did extremely well. I was so grateful that it went as far as it went. And that was my story of my depression, not even, anything useful for people in business, and in my opinion.
I mean,
and then
it is very useful for people in business, right? Because a lot of people go through depression in business and they just keep going, don't they?
Yeah. But I didn't think it would be something someone would buy. I just thought this would just help me elevate my status, and those that are depressed might need it. Whereas what I realized was what I was writing in my book was helping all my clients go through any ups and downs, like you say, because everyone goes through it. Not everyone talks about it. And then I wrote my book, and then other people came to me and said, Chloe, I know you've coached me through my life. You've coached me through a bit of my business. How did you do that with your book? How did you get more visibility? How have you grown your status? How are you getting invited on the media? How are you getting on magazine covers? And that's when I suddenly realized, I was like, this is it. I've built my brand to a place now where I can get interviewed on podcasts and speak on stages, and my business is still earning me money. And that's what I realized. That's what I love to help people with. So do I still have sleepless nights? Yes. Do I still have the stress? Yes. But my mind is not attached to my money. So if I do have a mental breakdown, if I do go through a depressive state, my business will still make money. And that was the difference for me. I built a business, not a job.
That's powerful. I think I remember someone saying, like, being self-employed, you're literally the world's worst boss.
Yeah, exactly. That was me.
You don't pay yourself enough. You can't take no holidays.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not working, you're not eating. You're working 24 hours a day. It's crazy, right? There's no break. So, that's absolutely amazing. It's really, really amazing to see. Because now you are the visibility queen, right? You've got business, queens in business, and, you guys are really rocking it right now. What does visibility actually mean to you?
Yeah. Visibility is about getting seen. It's about people knowing who you are. Now, I always say to people, loads of people want more visibility. Like, every business will be great when they get more people to know who they are. But visibility alone doesn't get you anything. If someone knows who you are and sees you but doesn't value you, they're not going to work with you. So what every business needs, which is kind of hard to do in one tagline, is they need visibility and authority. So visibility is getting seen. Authority is being remembered. Authority is being known as the something. Like you just said, I'm known as visibility queen. Being known as something. So where I specialize in is I help people to get seen, get the visibility, get the eyeballs, and do something with it. Get known, get remembered. Whether you're on a magazine cover, you're in the media, whether you launch a podcast, you want to be a speaker, you want to write a book, whatever that is, whatever your strategy is, it helps people remember who you are so that they want to work with you in the future. I
was just about to ask, like, why is it important that people know who you are?
Yeah. Well, we've all had those sales conversations with potential clients. They go, but I'm not really sure you're going to be able to help me, or I'll think about it, or, all these other sort of objections that you hear. But when people value you and they get on a call with you and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm speaking to you. That's a different energy. And I don't mean, I'm not for a place of ego here. I know a lot of people that want to get visible to make themselves feel good and boost their ego. There is no place for ego in business. There is no place for self-esteem in business. If you build a business to build your self-esteem, it's going to collapse. And then if you have a bad day, you're going to collapse. So coming from someone who has been mentally ill before, you've got to detach the emotion. So the reason why I think visibility is so important for businesses is because it helps them get more leads. It helps them get more qualified leads. And it's a difference. For me, since I started doing this in the last 2 years, I get most of my leads from people who come to me. They email me, they email my assistant, they hear me on a podcast and they go, I want to work with her. Or, that's what we do in Queens in Business. So it's about getting more leads. So ultimately you have easier sales conversations and it's less effort.
So if I'm trying to get visible today, what would you say, okay, cool, here are the steps?
Yeah. It depends what type of visibility.
Yeah.
So there's loads of different types. So you can get more visibility by being more active on social media.
Yeah.
There's more visibility that you can get more active by publishing books. You can get more visibility by public speaking, podcasts, great example, speaking on stage, or in the media. So the way I always teach it is 4 things: profession, social media. Second one is book publishing. Third one, public speaking. Fourth one, press. So if you pick one of those and just focus on that. But the biggest thing that gets people results and visibility isn't having a one piece of visibility. It's like the domino effect. Get one, leverage it, it tips over the next one. So if you get, let's say you get featured in your local radio station. When you leave that local radio station, ask the journalist, ask the reporter, ask the host, oh great, what other stations do you know of that might benefit from hearing my story? Because the world's small. Journalists know journalists, hosts know hosts, podcasters know podcasters. It's what we do, right? So just ask and just start to build it. And then when you get, let's say you get featured in the radio, next time you reach out to your local newspaper, when I was featured on this radio station, I shared X, Y, Z. And it's just about leveraging that domino effect. And then to the point where when someone hears your name, they Google you and they see all these features. They see, like right now, if someone Googles me, there's a panel that says author, speaker. It pops up and then people want to work with you.
Incredible. I can, like, as you're saying, I'm just seeing all these different layers and all the different possibilities. And that's one thing people never do. First of all, ask, and there's almost this impulse of like, oh, should I really be asking? Would they really, be happy to refer someone? But if someone's just had you on that platform, then naturally they're going to be happy to, recommend you to someone else as well, because it's the reason why they've actually had you on their platform in the first place, right? Which makes a lot of sense. So like you guys at the moment, so like you're flying, you're helping people actually sort of become more visible. What's that meant for you personally in your personal life?
Sorry, what was that?
What has that meant for you personally in your personal life?
Oh, it's been amazing. So for me, when I was running my business on my own, it was good. When I made the decision, so I've technically got 2 businesses. One is for female entrepreneurs, more visibility. The other one is book publishing business. So both of them help people get more visibility and authority. The visibility stuff I loved, but it was too big a vision for myself. And I felt like I was holding it back because I was so busy. I had to do all the marketing and manage the marketing team. I had to manage the sales team. I had to manage the finance team. And I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm not loving this anymore. So I made a decision to give up 80% of my business and bring on other business partners. Now, everyone used to think I was mad. It's like the second time I've heard, Chloe, you're crazy. But I thought, this feels right. And so I brought on 4 business partners. And I said, guys, this is my vision. I want to create Queens in Business. It's going to be a platform to help women to get more visibility and get seen. Are you up for it? And they all said yes. So gave them 20% of the business each, because I was like, I don't want to employ someone that's more headache. I still have to manage them. I want people like me, business owners who are hungry, who have a mission, who have a vision. And so we've just been able to grow. And you mentioned a few times that we are going big because I'm not on my own. So for me personally, to come back to your question, I've had so much more fun in these last 2 years. And actually, as I'm recording this episode with you today, it's our 2-year anniversary of launching Queens in Business.
Congratulations.
Exactly today. And I was like,
that's why we're on today.
and I just thought, do you know what? I've had so much more fun in the last 2 years. Like when we do our events, we are in fits of laughter. When we have our strategy days, we're taking the piss out of everything. The last strategy weekend we went to Brighton and spent the whole afternoon on all the rides as kids. Me playing on the dance machine, us doing the coin machines. It was just like, I'm the youngest and I'm 32 out of the 5 of us, right? So we just have so much more fun. And that was for me where I was like, this is actually what business is about. It's not necessarily about making money. It's not necessarily about, I want to help people. Yes, it's not even about that. It's about loving what you do. I'll come back to what I said. Create what you love. And I realize now in Queens, I've created what I love because I'm the CEO. I'm the main, I suppose, leader. I lead everyone, but I'm leading my business partners who are amazing at what they do, but they get to do what they love. And my main role is doing podcasts, doing more visibility strategies, mentoring our clients. And I'm like, is this really work?
Yeah, that's so powerful because, someone could hear that and be like, what, you just decided to give up, all this huge chunk of your business, right? But then at the same time, when I listen to how passionate you've just spoken, you've got this big smile on your face. You're like, I'm loving life. Things are good. It's great. It's like, well, like, cool. Like, that's what you're getting out of it. Like, that's the joy. Of course, you're making money. It's not charity. But it's but there's all this other element. You're designing the business based on your values and based on what you actually want from the business, right?
Yeah. And the business has earned way more as a result of that. So if I'd have just focused on the money wouldn't have come. Whereas now, I mean, literally this morning, we've just been agreeing our forecast for this year. And the target we've set, if I was doing on my own, I probably wouldn't have come here today. I would have been like, God, this is so stressful.
Got what to do.
Yeah. But now I'm excited by it because I know my piece. I know my part to play. And a really good friend of mine once said to me, just focus on your pixel. You know, the picture, beautiful photo, they're made up of loads of pixels. He said, just focus on your pixel. And now I'm focusing on my pixel. I'm focusing on what I love to do. They're focusing on what they love to do. And together we just make amazing things.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people thought I was crazy giving up 80% of the business, but that's because the 80% I've given up is stuff that, yeah, okay, I love doing it. I don't mind doing it, but I wasn't the best at it. I could do it, but I couldn't do it better than them. Now they're doing what they're the best at, and we're all having a great time, and we're having a laugh at the same time.
100%. Yeah, honestly, I love that. I love that because I've got a business partner as well who, you know, I think me and you probably love doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the other stuff is, you know, something that, like, I could do it, but do I want to do it? You know, that's the which is not really, you know, that's the truth, not really. But, you know, having someone there who loves doing that stuff and would hate doing the stuff that I'm doing. It's like, I don't speaking and like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. It's like, okay, cool, this is perfect. So, you know, let's bring this into like a perfect marriage. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. And it just makes things a whole lot easier because then you get to do the things that you truly enjoy doing. And when you're doing that, you're going to be super effective at it.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you've just done something that you've hated for the last 2 hours and then now you got to go on for this next hour to do what you really love, it's not going to be the same energy in it because you're like drained from all that crap that you don't want to do, right?
Yeah. And you feel inspired. And that's the one word that I keep coming back to in my whole life is that I've always been inspired. And I think when you're doing what you love, you can't do that and not be inspired. You just can't. Like, and like you say, you know, we all have to do things we don't want to do. And there'll be days where we don't want to do it. That's just human nature. But if you focus on what inspires you and you feel inspired to do something, it doesn't even, the time flies. It doesn't even feel like work, let alone doing anything, you know? And I think when you focus on what inspires you, and I'm a visionary person, that's probably why I'm the CEO of Queens, but we plan this vision. And when we leave our strategy days or our team meetings, we have a monthly all team meeting, and I'm excited telling them the vision, and then I leave more excited than them once we've had the team meeting. They all love it, and we leave, and I'm so excited to speak to them next time and go through how they're getting on with their piece and their pixel. And yeah, it's just been an amazing time. Amazing.
It's a shame this has got to come to an end. Yeah, I'm really really enjoying it, but I'm going to respect the time. And look, we've got a tradition of the podcast, so there's a final question coming, but the journey is incredible. Like, honestly, so good. And that's why I love having this conversation on the podcast. It's not about, you know, all these amazing things you've achieved. It's like, what's the journey? Because there's someone else sitting there right now, you know, watching this, and they're going through a depressive state. You know, maybe they're on a recovery and they've stuck this podcast on and listening to this message, like, bang, okay. This, like, I can do this. Like, look at where she is now. You know, look at all this enjoyment. So, like, you know, that's really what it's all about. So, you know, you've achieved a lot. And I know, you know, from your, you know, speaking all across different stages, you're also inspiring a lot of people as well. So now that you've done all of this, like today, coming to the question, what is your need to succeed?
Oh, I love that. I'd say now, knowing what I know, my need to succeed is about inspiring people. You mentioned about me speaking on stages and I inspire people. That is my goal. And every single time, whether I sit down on a chair like this in a podcast, when I speak on stage, whether I'm writing books, whether I'm helping other people write books, I just love inspiring people. And if every single day I inspire one person, then that's the reason I'm living that day. And that is it's just something, and I do journaling every morning. And that is one of my questions on my journaling every morning. What am I going to do today to inspire someone? And it's just something that fuels me every single day, and that's my need to succeed.
Wow. Well, you've inspired me today.
Oh, thank you.
Chloe Bisson, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
It's been an honor. Thank you very much.